Now that Doug has been released, there are 140 gadgets in the game, and today I will be rating the annoyingness of every single one of them. Let's begin. The fast forward gadget has gotten a lot more underwhelming ever since Shelly got her dreaded speed buff. When I find one of the few Shellys that use it, it's not really bothering me. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. On the other hand though, Shelly's clay pigeons is extremely difficult to deal with. Once you're slowed down with shell shock, she'll spam a quick few attacks that might finish you off. This gadget is very capable of defeating you in any game mode, and I am giving it an 8 out of 10. Next up we have Nita, and I'll start off by saying that her Bear Plus gadget is so powerful, especially when it's paired up with Hyper Bear. It even gets better now that Nita has an epic pet power gear, and oftentimes there's just nothing you can do, so I'm giving this gadget a 10 out of 10. As for Nita's other gadget, Faux Fur, it of course makes the bear a lot more difficult to deal with, and passively makes Bear With Me a little bit better, and it's pretty bad but not the worst thing you'll deal with, and I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 on annoyingness. As for Colt, I'll say that his Speed Loader gadget is hardly going to drive me crazy in actual combat, because usually he'll just use it on a heist save, so that just gets a 3 out of 10. But his Silver Bullet, on the contrary, is super powerful in pretty much any map, where it can destroy any of your cover or give him easier access to certain parts of the map. No matter what its use is, I'm giving this Wall Breaker of Doom a 7 out of 10. Bull's T-Bone Injector gadget isn't useful in every situation, but he can occasionally just get the health he needs to survive, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. His Stomper gadget, on the other hand, is extremely difficult to deal with since it's an offensive-based gadget. The slow effect that it provides, as well as the fact that there's now a very high damage tank standing right next to you, is certainly very good at driving me crazy, and I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. As for Brock, you'll see his Rocket Laces gadget used to either escape from enemies or jump directly on top of them if it's a smart decision, so this gadget gets a 9 out of 10. Rocket Fuel is a bit less difficult to deal with because he can either open the map up for himself or blow apart all the cover that the enemies are hiding behind, and I am giving it a 6 out of 10. As for El Primo, his Suplex Supplement gadget is really good at punishing people who don't team with you in showdowns. This one gets a 5 out of 10. I'm kidding, please don't team. Asteroid Belt, on the other hand, is able to destroy walls and damage you if you stand there for long enough, but it's still a bit more underwhelming, so this gadget gets a 4 out of 10. Barley has a Sticky Syrup Mixer gadget that's really good when he uses it while standing next to a wall. Doing this, he can slow down enemies on the other side of the wall and then hit them with plenty of attacks before they escape. As a result, this gadget gets an 8 out of 10. His Herbal Tonic, however, is able to heal his teammates, but it's not always going to be a game-changing move. Plus, I'm not getting slowed by it, so this gadget gets a 3 out of 10. Poco's Tuning Fork gadget isn't really that annoying because it just heals his teammates, and I mean, he can already do that pretty well, so this gadget gets a 2 out of 10. Protective Tunes, however, can cleanse and protect his teammates from pretty much anything, even an Otis super, and if I was that Otis, I would be very annoyed, so this gadget gets a 6 out of 10. Moving on to our last rare, we have Rosa. Her Grow Light gadget makes pretty much no impact right away, and it's not annoying at all, so I give it a 1 out of 10. But her Unfriendly Bushes gadget is the complete opposite. It can either detect enemies or put them in a situation they can't get out of, so I give this one a 10 out of 10. Moving on into the super rares, we'll start off with Jessie. For her Spark Plug gadget, she's able to slow enemies within a significant range around her super. This usually enables her turret to laser any target that it slowed, and of course be hit by Jessie much more easily. This gadget gets a 10 out of 10. Oftentimes, you'll see Recoil Spring paired with the Shocky Star Power, and quite frankly, it is a deadly combo. But luckily, you can still run away from the turret at a normal speed, so I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. Our next brawler is Dynamite, and his Fidget Spinner gadget is certainly getting a little bit better. It's hard to dodge, and now it deals 2,000 damage on contact, but there's still a lot worse that he can send your way, so I'm only giving it a 3 out of 10. But when it comes to his Satchel Charge attacks, I think I can say that being stunned by one of those is the most painful things altogether, so this without a doubt gets a 10 out of 10. Tick's Mind Mania simply doubles the output of his next attack. It can be very effective if it's placed right, and it's certainly annoying to be the brawler that's running into all those mines. With that being said, I give it a 5 out of 10. His last Blast Hurrah gadget is able to prevent him from being taken out in a lot of situations. Not to mention, it can knock brawlers back if they get too close, so I will be giving this a 6 out of 10. 8-Bit's cheat cartridge is able to be used offensively or defensively, but given the fact that he's one of the deadliest brawlers in the game, makes this ability incredibly powerful, so I'll easily be giving this a 6 out of 10. His extra credits, however, is usually a gadget that you'll see 8-Bits missing, but once they get this shot off on your heist save, you are in a lot of trouble. 4 out of 10. Rico's multi-ball launcher is only really effective in enclosed environments, and of course most brawlers are smart enough to not approach Rico in an enclosed environment, but with the right balances it can still do a lot of damage to you, so I will be giving this one a 3 out of 10. His bouncy castle, however, is able to fully heal him in a very short amount of time. Given that Rico also has incredibly high damage, seeing an enemy Rico use this gadget is always a little bit annoying, so I will be giving this gadget a 7 out of 10. Getting hit by recoiling rotator is far from annoying. I mean, watching a Daryl spin around and hit me for a 400 damage shot is almost like a joke, considering that it's a gadget. This gadget gets a 1 out of 10. But his other gadget is a little bit annoying since he's able to slow you down when he's already close to you to maximize his damage. This gadget gets a 5 out of 10. Penny's salty barrel can turn her attack really deadly, really fast. And of course, it can tank a little bit of damage. This gadget gets a 6 out of 10. Her trusty spyglass gadget is really fun to use, but not that hard to dodge. But in most 3v3 events, this gadget can cause quite a bit of a panic, so I'll also be giving it a 6 out of 10. Next up we have Carl, and his heat ejector gadget can surprise the enemies with a very painful attack. Damage over time is usually the worst type to deal with, and Carl's gadget adds an additional 2,000 damage over a course of a few seconds, which leaves me to score this gadget as a 7 out of 10. Carl's flying hook has a different set of capabilities where it can allow him to land right next to an opponent right before using his super. This gadget gets an 8 out of 10. Jackie's pneumatic booster is way too simple of a gadget because even though it gives her a speed buff, she can usually be stopped before she makes it to her target. 1 out of 10. Her rebuild gadget usually has very limited use, and I think that its only good strategic use is to fix your net in overtime in Brawl Ball, so this gadget also gets a 1 out of 10. As for Gus, his cookie popper gadget is very consistently able to eliminate opponents, and it is super powerful. When you are that opponent, it's incredibly annoying, and this gadget easily gets a 10 out of 10. As for Soul Switcher, I don't really know how to rate it since it just fills up a spirit meter, and when you're in another team, what do you care? So this gadget gets a 1 out of 10. Moving on to epics, we'll start off with Bo. Now, Bo's old super totem would have gotten like a 15 out of 10, but since that's gone, the new version of totem still has somewhat powerful use, so I will be giving it a 6 out of 10. As for Bo's tripwire gadget, it's relatively hard to time it right so you blow up an enemy, but it is still a good resource at hitting a heist save. 3 out of 10. Ems's friend zoner gadget can be super annoying when she combines it with her attack and her super. This can easily eliminate you in any situation. 9 out of 10. Her acid spray, on the other hand, is a lot less to deal with, and it's usually used to just finish you off when you thought you got away, but in most other cases, it's just going to charge her super up a little bit. So this gadget gets a 6 out of 10. Stu has a speed zone gadget that nobody uses, which I think is good to use but not difficult to face against, so it gets a 1 out of 10. Stu's breakthrough, on the other hand, is super difficult to deal with, especially when you're a brawler who just can't defend yourself. As a result, breakthrough will get an 8 out of 10. Piper's auto aimer can slow you for long enough to hit you with a few attacks. Once you're slowed, it's pretty hard to avoid, and that can get annoying. 9 out of 10. Her homemade recipe, however, is a bit less annoying to deal with since it only affects one shot. This gadget will get a 5 out of 10. Pam's pulse modulator isn't that hard to deal with since it's pretty much an additional 2 seconds of her turret's ability, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. However, when a Pam can land an entire scrap sucker shot, it can get pretty annoying since you lose all your ammo without actually firing any of it. This gets a 7 out of 10. Frank's active noise cancelling is the perfect gadget for the brawler. It's like you think you're about to cancel a super, but then it just doesn't work. So this gets an 8 out of 10. But Irresistible Attraction only gets worse. When it's combined with this power grab star power, it deals enough damage to one-shot a Mortis. Either way, the overall mechanic of this gadget is pretty annoying and it deserves a 9 out of 10. BB's vitamin booster is short and simple, it just heals herself. And only sometimes the health is too much to handle, so I'll give this gadget gadget a 3 out of 10. But being slowed by her extra sticky gadget is kind of annoying, and I'm giving this one a 4 out of 10. Next up we have B, and her honey molasses gadget can be super annoying if she places it behind a wall. So I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. Her rattled hive gadget usually won't defeat you, but it can either find you in bushes or of course just deal a bit of annoying damage, but either way I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. Warp Blast seems to be played a lot less frequently, but when it is used it can be very surprising to the enemies and usually result in a takedown, so I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. Nanny's return to sender gadget is most definitely nightmare material. Anytime you have a high damage attack, you're always at risk of her sending it right back at you and it can possibly destroy you, so I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Edgar's Let's Fly is hard to really decide the annoyingness of since it just fills his super up faster, so it gets a 1 out of 10. But 2,000 extra health is a lot for a brawler like Edgar, so his hardcore gadget is relatively annoying and I'm giving that one a 5 out of 10. Griff's piggy bank gadget enables him to open up the map a lot so he can shred the entire enemy team with his super. So with that being said, I'll be giving it a 6 out of 10. His coin shower gadget, on the other hand, is, let's face it, not annoying or used, so I'm just gonna give it a 1 out of 10. Grom's watchtower is pretty simple, but the idea of knowing the enemy team can see you is only a little bit annoying, so I'll be giving this a 4 out of 10. But his radio check gadget is able to wipe you out really fast if he gets the right aim, so this gadget will get a 9 out of 10. Bonnie's sugar rush gadget enables her to perform a little bit faster, but I don't feel like it makes too big of an impact when I'm playing against it, so I'm only giving this gadget a 5 out of 10. But Crash Test is weak and not really used, and it's going to take a lot of convincing for me to think otherwise. With that being said, 1 out of 10. Hank's water balloons gadget pretty much just slows the enemy until his next attack is charged. It's not the most useful gadget for a slow attacking brawler, so it gets a 3 out of 10. However, his barricade gadget is actually still pretty effective with the new Hank, since it can significantly increase his durability. With that being said, I give it a 5 out of 10. Mortis's combo spinner gadget pairs well with his kinda slow reload speed, where it can finish the job that his 3 attack started. This one gets a 5 out of 10. Survival Shovel is certainly Mortis's more popular gadget since it enables him to charge a much bigger selection of brawlers. I'll give this a 7 out of 10. Terra's Psychic Enhancer gadget kind of just falls into the I know they can see me position, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. But her Support from Beyond gadget is really easy to deal with, but really deadly if you let it slip by and get to your high safe. Either way, it's capable of a lot if you don't deal with it properly, so I give it a 7 out of 10. Jean's Lamp Blowout is certainly capable of a good bit of torture, and it's very popularly used right after his super. In some of its cruelest cases, I think I can give it a 6 out of 10. His Vengeful Spirits, however, is honestly a really fun gadget to use, but being chased by that little thing and receiving damage when it reaches you is certainly not that pleasant, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. I don't really see any annoying qualities in Max's Phase Shifter. I mean, sure, it can dodge an attack here or there, but it's still just not that bad. It gets a 2 of 10. And if you think that's bad, I think Sneaky Sneakers is like a joke gadget, and I'm giving it a 1 out of 10 on Annoyingness. Mr. P's Surface Bell gadget is best used when his current porter is at really low health. Using this on top of his pet power gear is able to make the porters incredibly strong. With that being said, I give this gadget an 8 out of 10. Porter Reinforcements, on the other hand, seems to be a little bit weaker, but either way, it can get a lucky shot that will finish you off, or just be another unit that you have to deal with, so I give it a 7 out of 10. I honestly think that Garden Mulcher is very far from annoying. I mean, it's just a bit of health that Sprout will only get if he's next to a bush. So this gadget gets a 1 out of 10. Transplant is really just a pain. It can protect Sprout from you very well and pretty much prevent you from getting too close to it in a lot of situations. 9 out of 10. Byron's Shot in the Arm can heal all of the health that you just took from him, but it takes a little while. So this gadget will get a 5 out of 10. His booster shots, however, make his attacks a little bit harder to dodge or more powerful if the targets are up close. This one gets a 6 out of 10. Squeak's wind-up gadget is certainly underrated, and quite frankly, getting sniped by this gadget from a distance is pretty annoying because it does a lot of damage, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. But with proper use, Squeak's Residue gadget can make a very hard to avoid slow zone, which is probably one of the most annoying things in all existence, so this gadget easily gets a 10 out of 10. Gray's Mini Gene Super Walking Cane gadget is actually really annoying because it has quite a bit of power and it breaks all the walls between you and Gray, so I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. His Grand Piano, which I still miss the original of, just isn't good anymore, but it can still blow up some stuff, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. When Willow attacks with her Spellbound gadget, it makes like a mini Byron super out of her attack, but it's still somewhat hard to hit and not really that powerful, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Her Dive gadget, on the other hand, is able to hide you from enemies and possibly make them waste a lot of ammo. Sometimes you can just wait for Willow to pop out, but in other cases, it can actually mess you up a little bit, so I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. When I initially did research for this video, I gave both of Doug's gadgets a 5 out of 10, but this was long before his release. Now, looking at this brawler, I'm adjusting the score of both of his gadgets to a simple 1 out of 10. Spike's popping pincushion gadget is really hard to use up close to an enemy, but you can still deal a little bit of pesky damage if you use it at a reasonable distance, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. His life plant, on the other hand, got a few too many nerfs, and I feel like it's not that annoying to deal with, and I'm also just giving it a 4 out of 10. Ro's defense booster gadget can combine with his extra toxic star power for maximum effect. This can make his 3600 health seem like a lot more than you would think. 7 out of 10. But now we're looking at slowing toxins, and I think we just have this rule that any slow gadget is so annoying to deal with. But Crow's slowing gadget in particular is way too easy to use, and I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10. Leon's clone projector gadget pretty much stops tricking anybody who has a bit of experience in the game, but it's still able to tank half of his health if it's used properly. I'll give this gadget a 5 out of 10, but his lollipop drop, on the other hand, is able to hide his teammates somewhat effectively, and in its best use, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Sandy's sleep simulator gadget is honestly really powerful in many situations. Imagine that you're just about to finish him off, and then he suddenly has full health again. That can happen, but I don't feel like it happens all the time, so I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. His Sweet Dreams gadget, however, is really good for some of the more toxic players in the community. Either way, dealing with that instant stun is incredibly annoying, so I'll give this gadget a 9 out of 10. Amber's fire starters can speed her up, build up her super, and now can slow down the enemies. And that all happens before it burns them. 7 out of 10. Her Dancing Flames doubled its damage, but it's still not really that good, so I'm only giving this one a 2 out of 10. Meg's Jolting Volts is not the most fun gadget to deal with, but it does take a little while for the health to fully come in, so I'll be giving this one a 5 out of 10. But her Toolbox gadget, on the other hand, is really not the most noticeable thing you'll see, so I'm only giving this one a 2 out of 10. So I don't really know how to rate Spicy Dice, since I either don't know when the Chester uses it, or it just doesn't really make any difference at all, so I'm giving it a 1 out of 10. But his Candy Beans, on the other hand, is possibly annoying depending on what it is, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. So moving on to Chromatics, we have Gale and his Spring Ejector gadget. This can help his team get to the center of the map quicker in 3v3s, or it can get them over annoying obstacles. This gadget still adds a bit of a fun use to the game, but in terms of annoyingness, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Gale's Twister gadget seems like it got nerfed a lot, but it's still super powerful. It can completely block certain routes for a little bit, and cancel your attacks if you use it close enough. Given all that, I'll give this gadget a 9 out of 10. Next up we have Surge, and I feel like his Power Surge gadget is really good when he's at stage 2 and he's going into stage 3. That longer range is a super strong buff for him to get for a whole 10 seconds, and because of that, I'll give the gadget an 8 out of 10. But his Power Shield gadget is still super strong even though it got nerfed. If you use it properly, you can still fully eliminate an enemy very quickly, so I'll give it a 10 out of 10. If you're like me and you miss a few too many Colette supers, her nuh-uh gadget is just for you. When dealing against it, she can just get you to low health and then finish you off with this gadget, so it's certainly a little bit annoying, and I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Colette's Gotcha gadget is super powerful against any assassins. If she gets in range where she can just spam her attacks, she'll keep her health at an incredibly high amount and most likely defeat the brawler that she's dealing with. I'll give this gadget a 6 out of 10. I feel like Lou's Ice Block gadget is given a bit too much credit. I mean, if he uses it up against a very close enemy, they'll still be there when the shield wears off. 3 out of 10. His Cryo Syrup is such a good gadget though, because he can use it directly after his super and freeze the enemies before they get a chance to escape his ice rink. So this gadget will get a well-deserved 8 out of 10. Ruff's Take Cover gadget is good against just some brawlers, but when it is good, it can be annoying. For instance, it can distract a tick head, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Ruff's Air Support gadget is a bit more of a controlling move than it is actually meant to take damage, and And with that being said, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Belle's nest egg can be pretty surprising if you step on it, but usually there might be an enemy brawler lurking around, and once you're stuck in that slow effect, it can be pretty painful. I'll give this gadget a 6 out of 10. Belle's reverse polarity gadget is able to make it a heck of a lot easier for her to hit just one shot, but that just one shot can be very critical in some situations, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Usually if a Buzz uses the reserve buoy gadget, he's either escaping or he's rushing after a brawler that he knows he can take down, so it gets a 6 out of 10. X-ray shades on the other hand kind of just applies to the rule where you know the enemies can see you, so I'm just gonna give it a simple 4 out of 10. Ash's chill pill gadget is very good at enforcing his retreat. No matter what its use, it can still restore him a reasonable amount of health. This gadget gets a 4 out of 10. Watching an Ash self-damage himself is pretty funny, but watching the same Ash become faster and stronger is pretty unpleasant, so I'll give this one a 3 out of 10. Next up is the drama queen herself, and I'm gonna give her freeze frame gadget a 5 out of 10. It's really good at distracting the enemies a bit, but it's still a little bit easy to just not deal with. But stunt double can be used both offensively and defensively, and it can really throw off the enemies, and I'll give this one a 6 out of 10 on annoyingness. Bang's corn fu is really good at detecting the enemies and dealing an annoying amount of damage. I mean, it can create a massive minefield that they don't want to run through. Given all of that, I'll give this gadget a 5 out of 10, but roundhouse kick just easily gets a 10. Oftentimes, you'll see it as part of some combo move, and I mean, being stunned by an assassin is easily annoying. Eve's Gotta Go seems to have a lot of annoying potential if it's used at its best, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Her motherly love gadget, which I used and I like, doesn't really provide any annoying value to the enemy, so I'll give it a 1 out of 10. Janet's drop the base gadget faced a large nerf recently, but it's still super powerful. Its ability to consistently prevent your health regeneration is annoying, so I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Like all the other mobility gadgets, Backstage Pass is really good at being annoying, and because of that, I'm just giving it a 7 out of 10. Otis's Dormant Star gadget seems to be very rarely used, but randomly stepping on a wild sill is super painful, so I'll give this gadget an 8 out of 10. Otis's Fat Splatter gadget is a heck of a lot more popular, and it's able to deal a lot of damage and even hit you through a wall. It gets a 9 out of 10. Since Sam starts with a super, that already helps both of his gadgets. Getting pulled by magnetic field is by far one of the most annoying things in the entire game, so this gadget will easily get a 10 out of 10. His pulse repellent is sometimes hard to aim properly, but in the off chance that it knocks you directly towards the Sam, it can be annoying, so I'll give this gadget a 6 out of 10. Buster's utility belt gadget is very powerful, but only sometimes hard to set up. With that being said, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. His slow-mo replay gadget can be very annoying though, because you can be pulled right away from your team and then get executed. This gadget gets an 8 out of 10. Mandy's caramelized gadget might make you an easier target for her super, but they'd never really use it anyways. Either way, a slow effect that came from very far away is certainly very annoying, so I'll give this gadget a 7 out of 10. But Mandy's Cookie Crumbs gadget is a lot easier to be pesky with. If you're at low health, there is now nowhere that you can hide to protect yourself from this shot, so this gadget gets an 8 out of 10. RT's inline gadget is actually so powerful, it can wipe out the entire enemy team. I'm just kidding, it's awful. It gets a 2 out of 10, no description needed. RT's Hacks gadget is probably one of the best gadgets in the game. As soon as an RT sees an enemy player that's at around 1000 health, one use of the gadget and they're just gone. 10 out of 10. Maisie is actually a really good brawler right now, and Disengage plays a pretty good role in that. Once you get too close to her, she can stun you and then attack or super you. This one gets a 7 out of 10. Maisie's Finish Them gadget is really fun to use, but sometimes the brawler is just at low enough health that the bonus doesn't really matter. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10. And last but most certainly not least, we are on Cordy. His replanting gadget looks so much fun when you use it, but it's not always like the most effective thing, so it gets a 3 out of 10. But Poison Mushroom, which is literally like a mini Otis super, is out of this world annoying. If I could give this one an 11 out of 10, I would, but I'll still be fair with you, and I'm giving this gadget a 10 out of 10 on annoyingness. Anyways, 140 gadgets is a heck of a lot. If you watched the whole way to the end, you are awesome. Thank you very much. Other than that, that's all I have for today, so thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.